So, I think we've talked a little bit about the red pill before. It's a big community of a lot of different beliefs. So I'm just going to address the ones that you're talking about today, which is covert things, planning how to be such that you remain attractive, playing games to make her stay interested. For instance, I would imagine something like leaving her on red on a text to make, even though you know the answers to your plans that night, and even though you might like to text her back to prove that you are high status, for instance. Totally not worth it. Totally not worth it. So even if that works, what you wind up, the prize for you at the end of the day is someone who you have to play games with and doesn't like you when you're expressive in how you truly feel. It becomes a job to maintain attraction. And what you get out of it is someone who doesn't really want to be with you. They want to be with the fake you that you've created who doesn't respond to texts and jerks them around. On the other hand, this is the other thing with the red pill.
Can I play devil's advocate? Yeah. So I agree with you. Let's start with that, right? But just then for making a more interesting conversation, I'll devil's advocate you. So what about the idea that once she gets to know the real me, she'll like me and I can stop playing games. But to start with, I have to leave her on red and try to manipulate her into thinking I'm busy or thinking more about me, because she isn't going to initially like me unless I play these games. But once she does and we've hooked up a couple times, I'll just stop the games because then we'll have a real connection.
Yeah.
So what's the counter to that?
I mean, do you want to take it?
No, I want to. Well, sure. I mean, if you want,
go for it. I think you know the answer.
Yeah. Well, so I guess a couple things. One is that there's a lot of things. One is you start to condition behaviors in people, right? So like we went out once with a woman who's super sweet. I was being really sarcastic and kind of a dick because I was just in a mood. I'd just gone through a breakup like the day before. I brought out a horrible sarcastic side of her, and that is the frame. That's our relationship now. So she's like really sweet with you, really sweet with Henry, and then really sarcastic with me because it's like this monster I co-created, right? So I think that's in there. Two, your initial attraction. I mean, there is something to this that you can lie your way into having sex with someone, right? But not in a way that's going to be sustainable. Like if you have to lie and play these games in order to get laid, you will get laid. But ultimately, once you stop, she's not going to like who you actually are.
This is a Bernie Madoff applied to sexual relationships. Like you can trick people.
Yeah.
Like
and
that's possible.
You've tricked your way into sex. Now you're acting like who you actually are. She's not going to like who you actually are because she decided she liked someone that you were pretending to be, and she'll start to resent you and just treating you badly or breaking up with you. So while you can get what you might be aiming at, which is sex one time, I would suggest that what you're aiming at is going to ultimately lead to more unhappiness than happiness, because you're going to end up with a huge headache and a relationship that doesn't work.
Yeah. That's the crux of it for me. Is I'm familiar with some of the stuff and the games that you have to play, and otherwise it's treated almost as if you don't play these games, she's gonna lose interest in you, cheat on you, move on to someone else. And I think that might become true for the type of person who constantly plays games, because the only people that stay around them are people who are tolerant and respond to those games. It's like you're almost filtering for someone who responds.
Well, you filter out the person who thinks that it's rude that you didn't respond for 6 hours.
Exactly. You're removing people. The other thing about the red pill, and while I think it is and can be useful to speak in generalities about men, women, Democrats, Republicans, it's also important to keep in mind, all women are this way. Well, there are some women who are lesbians, right? There are some women who all your male charm will not work on, and they make up a significant portion of the population. So if that exists, it stands to reason that there are other subsets in there that might not want to play those games, right? That might not follow all the standard rules as laid out by this community, even if, and I'm not saying that they are, even if this represents the majority. So just my philosophy around dating is, we've talked about this, put your most average and normal foot forward while trying to become the best version of yourself.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is a lot of these games were created by people who saw it working for someone else that was doing it unthinkingly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think rather than try to mimic that behavior, why would someone
leave someone on
not
red? Yeah.
well okay, let's say not leave on red, because once you've read it you could respond or whatever. But like, let's say you get a text and you don't respond for 4 hours. Well, if you weren't playing games, what would that mean? Maybe it means you were surfing for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe you're actually indisposed. So instead of worrying about what are the habits of guys that do well with women and how can I try to pretend I'm like that, I would say find the guys that you're trying to model and figure out like why are they this way? It's probably because it's not that important to them. They're doing other stuff. They're with their friends. They're doing their hobbies. They have a job they're passionate about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, sometimes I'll actually go too far on accident. I'll check a dating app, message someone, and then forget to check for a week. And like, well, I'm like, oh my God, hey, I'm really sorry. And I'll blow that. But it's because I'm doing other stuff. And like, I think that the answer isn't to try to learn what the behavior is that works and then present yourself as if you're the kind of guy who's doing cool stuff. I think it's become the kind of guy who's doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And then sometimes you'll respond 10 seconds after someone texts you, and sometimes you'll be busy with your band or your surfing or your art and you won't respond.
Sure. And I think that with all things when it comes to social relationships, you can copy the behavior or the place that the behavior comes from. Now, sometimes when you copy the behavior, it can just be helpful. If you're going to speak more with your hands out, it's generally a good idea. There are other things like you talked about, like, oh, wow, I watched that guy ignore a text. I'm going to copy that. But when you're missing the intent and the place that it comes from, it's just not as powerful and, in fact, can be counterproductive to what you would want it to do.
I actually do think it's incredibly useful, though, to know that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like to know that it's unattractive if you are responding within 3 seconds of every text forever. And that when you text somebody and then they respond 2 hours later, you text 3 seconds later, they respond 6 hours later, you text back 3 seconds later, that knowing that comes off as unattractive is very useful, I think, actually. And then, but I think what's the most useful thing you can do is instead of going, oh, that's unattractive, I won't do that, is going, why is this unattractive? Mm-hmm. And that, I think, actually is where incredible learning and personal growth can come from. It's like, why is this unattractive? Because you're ever present, available. This person that you don't know very well, or maybe if it's a dating app, have never met at all,
and you hold in such
is
high
your number
regard.
one priority. That's what's unattractive. And what would be attractive is somebody who was nice and funny and kind in their text, but at the same time was just unavailable. It just wasn't there for every 3 seconds. You know what I mean? And then I think that's really, really useful and can inform how you want to grow. Because I am all about personal growth and personal development. So yeah, I think knowing what is unattractive and why is super helpful.
Yeah. Hope that you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more like this and have us do more podcasts, we are 100% funded by our generous patrons. And if you'd like to contribute, there's a link in the description, and we'll have one pop up on the screen right here so that we can do more podcasts where we have fun conversations and hopefully some deep ones like this. Either way, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.